Subscribe to the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever quality podcasts can be found. Rate and review us while there. Follow us on Twitter at CosmicGPod, and we will follow you back. Unless you're a jerk. You don't follow jerks. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Welcome to the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast. We love hearing your ideas for upcoming episodes. Positive email culture at Cosmic Geppetto, where we talk about movies, comics, music, books, and whatever else we feel like. Please welcome your host, meeting and talking to new and interesting people.
Okay. What is the
Brad
second best part
Mendenhall.
of the podcast?
Crush your enemies. See them driven before you. Hear the lamentations of their women.
Hey kids, it is episode 287 of the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast, and it's sort of a weird one, because I'm recording this while driving home from dropping my son, Chase, off at middle school. And it's going to be a short episode, but it's going to be weird because you're going to hear like my the clicker going off from my turn signal and all that. But I wanted to take a second to talk about baseball, because as I've talked about in the past, I am a lifelong Phillies fan. I grew up outside of Philadelphia and followed the team my whole life, which in general, just being a Philadelphia sports fan is not easy. They don't win a whole lot. They've had some dreadful eras, and all you can do is persevere. And what also can be frustrating and can be a little challenging is the players you love sometimes aren't people that you want to be a big fan of when you find out about them otherwise. As a child, I was a big Pete Rose fan, and yikes. And Pete Rose, inarguably a great player, but the gambling scandal and just how arrogantly and poorly he handled that controversy in the following years. And it just turns out Pete Rose was and is a jerk. Doesn't make him any less of an amazing player and a hard-playing player. His nickname was Charlie Hustle because one of the iconic pieces of lore surrounding Pete Rose is whenever he would walk, he would run to first base. He would get a walk and he would run to first base. He would like hustle down and you don't see that sort of run out every play as hard as you can, run as hard as you can on every play from too many players. I remember specifically during the 2008 World Series, which was the last World Series that the Phillies won, Pat Burrell, who was a pretty good power hitter. That was sort of the only thing he did well. He hit for okay average, was bad defensively, but when he hit the ball and he got the bat really on it, it was going to be a home run. And there was this one at bat that he had during that World Series where he knocked the heck out of the ball. And he's doing a slow trot while watching the ball because he knew he hit a home run. But it turns out the ball was just about an inch or two shy of clearing the fence. So it bounced off the top of the fence. So it wasn't a home run. And you could see it where he had this look to say, oh shit. And all of a sudden he has to run as fast as he can. And Pat Burrell was not a fast runner to barely squeak out a double off of what he thought was a home run. And it was even commented by the announcers that if he had run hard the entire time, he might have been able to squeak out a triple because the ball was very high, it was in the air a long time, and he could have been on second by the time the ball hit the fence. And it's a very common thing. I have seen a lot of Phillies home runs this postseason, because they've hit a lot of them, that they hit the ball and they sort of know. So they just hit the ball and they sort of pose a little bit and watch, and this is not specific to the Phillies, and they watch and, flip the bat and everything. And I think during the postseason, I would love to see a Pete Rose-like player who hits the ball and then just runs like hell, regardless of if they think it's a home run or not. Especially in the postseason, I think there would be a lot of value to that. During the regular season, there's 162 games. Pose all you want, whatever. But postseason, where you just don't know, and every base you get could be a game changer. I would love to see a player who had that sort of run everything out. But Pete Rose had that, but also kind of a dick. I also was a big fan in 1993 season and the seasons before and after, Lenny Dykstra, the center fielder for the Phillies. And his nickname was Nails, because Lenny Dykstra was tough as nails. And he was another player that ran out every play and just played with reckless abandon. He injured himself because of how hard he would run into the center field wall going after a fly ball. And he was not the most physically gifted player. Really had mediocre or average MLB athletic abilities, which is nothing to wag your finger at. But regardless, because he played so hard, because he had this amazing intensity, and because he was a very, very smart ball player, he was able to take that, league average ability and turn it into all-star seasons. But after he left baseball, he got involved in the world of finance and prided himself on being this business-savvy savant. But it was revealed he was ripping people off and widely overstating his financial acumen. And then there were also accusations of sexual impropriety. And in interviews where he's trying to present himself as well as possible, came across as a sleazebag. I was like, oh, that's depressing. Also from that same area, and probably my favorite baseball player at the time was pitcher Curt Schilling. And this was another guy who loved baseball. Named his son Gehrig after Lou Gehrig, and had a room full of memorabilia from the game. There are some baseball players, there's some athletes who, regardless of the sport, you get this sense, and sometimes they even come out and say it, where whatever sport they're playing is a means to an end. They were touched by the Almighty to have this incredible ability to excel at sports, and got good at it, but never really loved it. It was just something they were preternaturally good at, so they could make a lot of money doing it, and it beat whatever other job they could get their hands upon. And I'm not belittling that. I understand, but but it's a shame. But it's not that it's a shame, but it gives me a special fondness for players like Curt Schilling, even Alex Rodriguez, who I think he sort of has repaired his reputation, but even before that, say whatever you want about A-Rod, he's definitely played a little fast and loose with the rules, and could be kind of arrogant or unlikable, but he loved baseball. And Curt Schilling had that same thing. Also, I remember very specifically every year WIP, the sports talk station in Philadelphia, would have a fundraiser, and they would have stuff like, oh, this bat was signed by Darren Dalton, or this glove that was worn by Mike Schmidt, whatever. And that's great, and fans would call in and bid on it. Curt Schilling actually put up for bid dinner at Curt Schilling's house with Curt Schilling and his wife. He offered to open his home to a fan to come, and he and his wife would cook dinner, and they would serve drinks, and you would get to hang out with Curt Schilling. And that impressed me because he showed an awareness for how privileged he was and giving back to the fans. And I always liked Curt Schilling for that. Since his retirement, Curt Schilling has sort of gone alt-right, has lost employment as a commentator because of some anti-Muslim tweets, and I don't have a problem with, it's not that he's Republican, I don't like him because he's Republican, it's he seems to have publicly embraced the worst parts of the ultra-right viewpoints, and I find it a shame. And it just is the same as if I was a fan of someone who embraced taking the left ideology and going in a unhealthy or dangerous or direction. I would be equally as off put by that. I always feel like I need to justify why I don't like people, and that's a little silly, but here we are. So anyway, yeah, longtime Philadelphia fan, and they are currently up in the National League Championship Series. They want to get to the World Series. They're up 2-1 against the Arizona Diamondbacks in a best-of-7 series. They need 2 more wins. They're going to play 2 more games in Arizona against the Diamondbacks. And then if it goes to it, then there would be 2 more games in Philadelphia. Philadelphia Citizens Bank Park is viewed as one of the best home field advantages in sports. My belief is they lost last night, as I'm recording this, 2-1 in 10 innings. I feel that while you certainly always want to win, I feel that loss sets up a really good next game, because the Diamondbacks had to throw out all their best relief pitchers who are going to be worn out. And I think this upcoming game, the Diamondbacks don't have another really strong starting pitcher to throw out. I think the Philadelphia players are going to be acclimated to the environment. It was a little bit of a come-down game after winning 10-0 the previous game. I don't think you're going to be able to keep the Philadelphia bats, Bryce Harper, Schwarber, Real Muto, Castellanos. these are guys who hit a lot of home runs. You're not going to get 2 games in a row without those guys hitting the long ball. Or if nothing else, you're not going to keep them from being effective. And without a strong starting pitcher and with a bullpen that's going to going to start getting worn out, and B, the Phillies are going to get a couple more chances to look at. Eventually, they're going to figure it out, and they're going to get dialed in. I think this series is going to go 5 games. I think the Phillies are going to win the next 2. I think they're going to. I think this next game could be a shootout. The Phillies going with their fourth starter. They have a couple good options for fourth starter, and they have a stronger bullpen. But still, I think finally we're going to have that 8-5, 9-6 game that we haven't really seen in these playoffs with the Phillies as much. I think there was one sort of high-scoring game when they played Atlanta, but I think this is going to be the game where the bats are going to be really cracking. But I think the Phillies are going to win that, and then the following game you're going to have Wheeler starting for the Phillies, and he has been really good. And I think that I think you're going to have. I think they're going to finish it up. It could go 6. Maybe that shootout goes the other direction, but I don't think the Diamondbacks will be able to sweep 3 games and then go into Philadelphia and win again in Philadelphia, where they just looked intimidated last time. Baseball and other sports are all strange and things can go in different directions, but I just don't see it happening. There was a statistic that once a team wins the first 2 games in a 7-game series, that team goes on to win the series 86% of the time. That is some pretty cool odds. Now, the one thing I've said is if you found out that a lottery, you had a 16% chance or 14% chance of winning, you buy a lot of tickets because those are not insurmountable odds. So that's why they play the games. I think the Diamondbacks are a good team, and they certainly have had a great postseason. I just sort of believe in the Phillies. I think they're going to go into the World Series and play the Rangers, and that'll be exciting stuff. The Rangers have looked really good. I would be reluctant to make a prediction at this point, one thing at a time. So, yeah, that is my take on the National League Series. Go Phils. I would have loved to have Paul Francis Sullivan on to talk about it, but it'd be too hard to get that turned around, and by the time the episode would be out, the series would be over. Paul Francis Sullivan, who did the Bull Durham Minute and also has a wonderful podcast talking about Major League Baseball. Sully. I love Sully. He is one of my favorite people in podcast world. I just find him a really impressive guy and a good guy. And I got a chance to meet him at the Philadelphia Minute by Minute convention. And I've met so many cool people doing this, but Sully is one of the people where I just think he's such a great guy, and I wish I could hang out with him all the time. So, I'm going to try to do a few more of these mini episodes, shorter episodes. It was something that I always wanted to do when I started the podcast. I thought I was going to do a lot more, just me talking directly to the audience. But I ended up getting such good guests and such good contributors and such a great panel that I never did it a lot. I always sort of viewed my goals to be sort of like the Dana Gould Hour, a great podcast with comedian and writer and actor Dana Gould, where he would have his true tales of Hollywood. It's a section of each episode where he would go into the history of go into a section of history of Hollywood, tell some great stories. I always sort of wanted to do that, but it just never happened. But as we're sort of winding it down, I figured it'd be fun to have these direct talks, these sort of drive-in talks. I did those a few times with movie reviews, but the pandemic happened and I saw less movies and it didn't occur as often. But I'll be doing this a little bit more as we get towards the end of the year and episode 300. So thanks so much for listening. Go Phils. And as Jarf likes to say,
see you in the funny pages.
Subscribe to the Cosmic Geppetto podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever quality podcasts can be found. Rate and review us while there. Follow us on Twitter at CosmicGPod and we will follow you back. Unless you're a jerk. We don't follow jerks. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cosmic Geppetto. We love hearing your ideas for upcoming episodes. Email us at cosmicgeppetto@comcast.net.
Beth, what is the best part of podcasting?
Meeting and talking to new and interesting people.
Okay, what is the second best part of podcasting?
Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, hear the lamentations of their women.